When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Trudy Mason sitting in for Elias again today, getting an update now from National Post columnist Adam Zivo in Israel. We heard earlier this morning that Israel took a hit from an Iranian missile today. Part of a larger barrage across the Middle East that Iran sent out. We also heard yesterday from Israel that it had killed Iran's intelligence minister in a strike. And that person had been the one widely considered to have been pulling a lot of the strings after the death of the supreme leader. Adam Zivo, welcome to CJAD 800.
Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about what is going on in Israel today? Were you anywhere near the either the strike or the intercepted Iranian missiles?
I mean, the strike occurred a few kilometers away from where I'm currently staying in Tel Aviv, but this kind of stuff happens, quite frequently in Israel. We've been having interceptions pretty much every single night for the past few weeks. Well, since the war began. And the mood on the ground is much calmer than most people assume in the West. So the number of missiles being sent to Israel by Iran has decreased by over 90% since the beginning of the war. At this point, they send just a few missiles a day, kind of scattered throughout the day, and then everyone has to go into the shelter, wait for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then come out. The Iranians have resorted to using cluster munitions to try to bypass Israel's air defenses. So these are rockets that contain, a large number of warheads. And of course, it's much more difficult to intercept them because you have all of these dozens of warheads instead of just one rocket. But on the trade-off for that is that each individual warhead is much smaller than that of a ballistic missile. So if you're in a shelter and a cluster munition lands near you, you are probably going to be okay. Versus if a ballistic missile, like a traditional one, lands directly on your shelter, then you were probably going to die, right? So because they've done these cluster munitions, that increases the scope of property damage. But so long as you follow instructions and go to the shelter when you are asked to, you will probably be okay. There are some people who might be unlucky because they are in their cars, or they might be too old or disabled to go to the shelter on time, and they haven't spent, some time overnight in the shelter. The two people who died yesterday were elderly, unfortunately. But we have to keep in mind that the number of casualties, the number of deaths right now is still very low. We're looking at, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen people, which in the context of a full-scale war with Iran is actually a pretty miraculous outcome.
How confident is Israel in that the death of Iran's intelligence minister will actually make a difference in the outcome of the fighting? Is there some confidence that if you've cut off the head of that particular snake, the rest of it will wither?
Right now, there's a great degree of confidence in Israel right now that they're winning the war. When it comes to killing specific leaders, that's always celebrated, but there's also an understanding that they can be replaced. The most important thing to look at right now is what are Iran's offensive military capacities. And we see that in this case, Iran is being dominated in every single sense. So once again, their ballistic missiles are no longer coming in large waves. They've been reduced to kind of trolling everyone. Yes, we have attacks coming from Hezbollah in the north, in northern Israel. There, things are a little bit spicy. But Hezbollah is also a power that Israel has dealt with previously and can subdue once again. So on the whole, although Israelis are exhausted because they're not getting a lot of sleep, they feel pretty okay with how this war is being prosecuted. It's actually less intense than the 12-day war last summer, and the 12-day war was way less intense than everyone assumed that it would be.
We have heard that the Israeli strikes going into central Beirut have stepped up in recent days. Is there a feeling that that aspect of the fighting will soon end? against
No,
Hezbollah?
it's likely going to continue and intensify. And the problem here, of course, is that Iran's strategy to attack Israel has been to fund a constellation of proxy militias, including Hamas and Hezbollah. And Hezbollah was the most significant of these militias. In fact, it was a little bit surprising that Hamas turned out to be the first to attack Israel on October 7th. But on the whole, the Israelis were able to cripple Hezbollah recently, and now they're going in again. And they know though that Hezbollah is very entrenched, and it's a fairly large fighting force. And so they know that this is going to be a prolonged campaign. That life in northern Israel is going to be uncomfortable for the next few weeks at least. But on the whole, I think that there is some frustration with how the war with Hezbollah is being portrayed in the West, because for some people in the West, they think of this as being an unprovoked attack. They don't realize that Hezbollah has been, launching missiles at Israel for years and was hoping to work with Hamas to essentially dismantle Israel. Uh, and there isn't enough of an understanding within Canada or the United States that Lebanon had previously committed to rooting out Hezbollah, but unfortunately, the Lebanese government was too dysfunctional and lacked the political will to do so. So now the Israelis have to go in and mop up this mess. When had the Lebanese government done its job better, none of this would have happened.
There is a lot of coverage in the West about the humanitarian aspect of the targeting of Hezbollah and the fact that you talk about how Hezbollah is very entrenched. So that's taking the strikes into areas that are largely civilian dominated. So there's been a lot of displacement of civilians, refugees having to flee wide areas of urban Lebanon as well. What is the reaction of the Israeli government to that type of reporting coverage?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to the Israeli government's response. I'm mostly here with the Israeli people. But what I can say is that Israelis broadly feel terrible for the Lebanese people and want there to be peace in Lebanon. Israelis would love nothing more than to live peacefully with their neighbors. Of course, you have a small number of extremists on the far right who have different beliefs, but they are widely disliked by the rest of Israeli society. But Israelis view this as a deeply tragic cost of Hezbollah's dominance. And I think that there's an anger here with how the West didn't take these proxy militias seriously enough and didn't apply enough pressure, for example, to the Lebanese government to suppress this proxy force, didn't provide enough aid to the Lebanese government to suppress this proxy force. And now we're seeing what could have been very avoidable civilian casualties and displacement. No one wants this to happen, but the alternative would be Hezbollah merely continuing to operate out of Lebanon, holding the Lebanese people hostage, preventing Lebanon from growing into and returning back to the beautiful country it once was. I mean, Beirut used to be called the Paris of the Middle East. All of this could have been so much better if the West had applied pressure differently.
Interesting. Thank you very much for joining us here on CJAD, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Adam Zivo is a columnist with the National Post.
Introducing Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
Join me for an insider look on a wild ride through 40 years of global rock and roll.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Or ask your smart speaker to play Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio.
Who's ready to rock?
Kids wanna rock.